Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Muhi Khwaja with the Muslim Philanthropy podcast at American Muslim Community Foundation. Today we have on Abbas Mohamed, who is the founder of Gathering All Muslim Artists. You can check out the Gamma Collective online. And welcome to the show, Abbas.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been quite excited to be on here and talk about Gamma.
Yeah, of course. And we're going to talk about a whole host of things because you do so much. But let's start off with a little bit more about you. Just tell us your background, where you grew up, how you got started with Gamma, everything in between that you want to share.
Right on, yeah, for sure. So I would say if there's one theme about my background is that I'm all over the place. So I was born in Kenya, lived there for a little bit, lived in the UK while my father was finishing bachelor's, moved to Southern California, then moved to Saudi for a good like 7 years, my formative years, and then came back to the States. I would say I've never really been in one area for longer than 3 years, so literally all over the place. In undergrad and grad school and throughout my professional career, I have been in biotech. I've been in the sciences for my master's thesis. I actually studied pesticides in honeybees. That was a really fun
Wow.
thesis project. And I graduated from UC Davis with a master's in pharmacology and toxicology. So, what does someone fresh out of grad school with a science degree do? I started an arts nonprofit.
That is so wild because I know you from one perspective, but that just opened the doors to so much else. So that's really fascinating. And were the degrees more so like your interests or passion, or like what led you to do research on bees?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been fascinated in the fact that a compound, which is essentially any molecule, is made up of atoms, and an atom is mostly empty space. So just think about this for a second on a quantum level. The fact that mostly empty space with a little bit of electrical charges in specific areas with a specific shape can actually have an effect on the human body and the human mind, it just blew me away, right? And so this is what fascinated me so much about medicine, about drugs.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that someone who has diabetes, you can take this drug that essentially a drug is just a molecule that has a very specific shape. Because of that shape, it sits in the receptor in the body, and yet it can have a tremendous, tremendous effect, right? So this fascinated me. This was my passion. So I've worked in biotech, I've worked at Genentech, I'm working at Gilead Sciences right now. And this is my day job. This is my nine to
Wow.
five.
Yeah.
I'm working with data. I'm working with science. Like this is kind of like what I do. This is what pays the bills.
3 minutes into this, I was not prepared for that. That was awesome. I think my mind's just going to be continued to be blown throughout the rest of this conversation. Uh, so
Yeah,
in terms of like, have you like worked with beekeepers or like done more stuff with bees in general?
yeah, absolutely. So the reason why I decided to research honeybees is because about, I want to say a year before I started grad school, I'd moved back home. I had my undergrad degree. I was working a professional job, bought my first car. I was like, cool. I stopped by farmer's market and there was a lady who was selling honey. She's a really sweet lady. So, I went up and I asked her to tell me more about the honey and like, does she keep her own bees?
Mm-hmm.
And she had a lot of customers at that time. So she told me to buzz off, right? So I came back the next week and the week after that, and I kept bugging her until she, accepted to tell me a little bit more about the mysterious trade of beekeeping. And the next weekend, I actually went out and helped her out with some of the hives. So this started a wonderful year of my life as an apprentice beekeeper. We harvested honey together. We took care of the bees together. I learned how to make soap. There were like just weekends where I was spending time with her making soap and candles and all sorts of stuff, right? So when I just knew that I had to get a master's degree, I didn't really care so much what it would be in. So I literally applied to three different programs at three different schools with three different majors. I just knew I had to get a master's because my mom reminded me, no one's going to marry you if you don't have a master's. Like that's the going rate right now.
There we
So,
go.
we got to get you on the market. There's a bachelor's is not cutting. It's very competitive.
Well, the
So
masters paid off, right?
it paid off.
Yeah.
It's like as soon as I got my master's, within I want to say 3 months I was married.
That's funny how that works.
It's really wonderful, alhamdulillah. So, either way, when I got accepted into Davis, I found out later that UC Davis is actually a leading school in honeybee research. So I was like, I'd be a fool not to take advantage of this. And I ended up spending a lot of time with the bees and doing a lot of research, which, hopefully helps out the bees in the long run, inshallah.
Inshallah. No, that's really fascinating. So you've lived in Oakland for how long now? Or just the Bay Area, back in the Bay Area?
Yeah, no, I moved back in 2005, so it's been 15 years, not counting the time I spent in Davis and Santa Cruz for school.
Sure. And, after you graduated with undergrad is when you started gathering all Muslim artists? Or after your master's program?
That was after grad school.
Okay.
That was after grad school. So it's been 4 years now. So the sequence of events was, I graduated with my master's. A few months later, got married. And it was at that point in time where, I don't know if you're familiar with the immigration processes. When someone comes to this country, for the first year, they can't work, right? They
Right.
can't have a
Right.
job, they can't hold a job or anything like that. So I thought, what are some ways that I can support her in things that she's already doing? And so she was an artist. That's like, when you first marry someone the traditional way, you don't know too much about them before you get into the marriage. And so one thing I knew is that she was an artist.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized very quickly that in the Muslim space specifically, there wasn't a lot of support for artists. There wasn't a lot of visibility for artists. There wasn't a lot of arts programming happening in my community. And so what started off as like this passion project based in love for this one person who I wanted to support, one thing led to another. And 4 years later, we have 3 chapters and we've supported hundreds of artists worldwide.
That's really beautiful. And, I've been inspired by the work that Gamma's doing. I've been fortunate to attend some of your events. So tell us a little bit more on some of those early events and then coming through to kind of now.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, so many things have changed along this way. So many things have happened on this journey. And it's always been about adapting, right? So at its core, for me, what Gamma is to support, empower artists. And the artists are the focus, right? And I think this is something that sets us apart from a lot of other art organizations who, even though they're doing awesome work, maybe they're focusing on the art, the impact of the art, and so on. Our focus has always been the artists, right? And so, on one hand, supporting artists means putting on exhibitions, putting on shows, giving an opportunity for performing artists to perform, for henna artists to provide henna. A lot of the things that people may consider entertainment was really a way of getting the artists in the community out there as producers so that they could be seen and valued, right? And this also leads into the empowerment aspect that say there's someone, we've done a lot of stuff in the mosque and at halal restaurants because this is where Muslims tend to gather or gathered pre-pandemic. And so I would say, for example, we had this event in Southern California, and there were just art pieces surrounding all around the room. And there's this one moment that I saw these three young boys looking at an art piece with awe. And then they looked at the sort of description and saw the name of the person. And when you
Mm-hmm.
see someone whose name is similar to yours and you see what they can do, in that moment, they're like, whoa, maybe I could do something like this.
Right.
Right. And we've always wanted to support and bring that pipeline in. So whether it's workshops at Sunday schools or art competitions, everything from the very like simple, basic emerging artists all the way to the professional artists, we've been looking at ways to support and empower them. Right. And I think that the biggest shift happened when, the pandemic hit, shelter in place happened. All of a sudden, we can't do our in-person events. And one thing that I've always prided Gamma in is that we've been very interactive and very community focused, and very focused on relationships in our programming. Now you're in a situation where everyone's kind of stuck at home. How do you recognize and build that relationship? How do you continue to make sure that the artists feel valued, right? And so that's really when we started to get into live streaming. We did 10 live streams in 10 weeks, including
Wow.
workshops to help people who are at home, you
Yeah.
know. And it's really been a long ride for us. And the number one thing, no matter what has changed, number one thing has always stayed the same is how are the artists doing right now? What do the artists need and how can we serve that? Right? That's what Gamma is really all about.
I want to switch gears a little bit because I know you're a big foodie, and let's talk about some of those journeys. And I know one of the projects you're working on right now is the Halal Restaurant Week. So really great concept and idea to support halal restaurants in the industry and locally, but something that could definitely be replicated across the country if they had the support and structure. So, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that side project that you got going on as well?
I started paternity leave, put everything on pause. I'm like, all right, 3 weeks, I'm just going to relax and focus on hanging out with the family. One thing they don't tell you is that babies, all they do really is sleep in the beginning phase. So, I kind of had a lot of time on my hands just sitting around in my paternity leave and decided to start this new project. So it's in partnership with Halal Fest. I've been on the Halal Food Festival team doing entertainment, social media stuff for, I want to say 6 or 7 years now. But yeah, I started as a volunteer in 2013. And this year we couldn't do a food festival. It just wouldn't be reasonable. It wouldn't be responsible to gather people in one place to feed them. Right. So I know Halal Fest was itching to do something. And I had this amazing community, Bay Area Halal Foodies, which started really small, sort of around Ramadan last year. And at this point has 7,500 people in a Facebook group and growing.
Yeah.
And so, the idea was to essentially, we have all this potential purchasing power. How can we use that to support all the Muslim businesses, the restaurants who have been serving the community during these tough times, right? I mean, all that like stress eating, someone's got to supply it. You know what I mean? So a restaurant week is something that started in New York, and it's been done in a lot of fine dining establishments, a little bit more like high class places where you tend to actually have wine pairings and usually not a lot of halal meat options. So this is the first ever. To my knowledge, has only been done in Korea, and I've done a lot of like googling on here. But essentially, this has never been done with a focus on the halal community with halal restaurants. So it's going to be a week-long extravaganza in December, inshallah. And every day we're going to be featuring different restaurants who have different offers. So really trying to drive the community to go and eat at these places, help out their businesses, to build relationships, and to see how we're all just connected through food. So whether it's the food organizing or the art organizing, again, it just comes down to relationships and connecting and community.
Yeah, I think there might need to be an offshoot of Gamma and do something with like gathering all Muslim foodies or
Gathering almost some eaters.
there
I'm
you go,
game.
game. There you go. You already thought of it. You knew it. Um, so, in terms of like how people can learn more about Gamma and the work that you're doing, and kind of, you can even talk about like some of the artists that you've supported and collaborated with over the years. So, feel free to dive back into Gamma as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So one really amazing project that's come out of Gamma very recently, and this has been spearheaded by our Gamma New York chapter. So we have a chapter here locally in the Bay Area, a chapter in Detroit, and a chapter in New York. So Gamma New York really spearheaded this amazing series called Liberation. And this has been an exploration of art and speaking to artists about how their art fits into liberation. And I think this is a much bigger topic that is very pertinent to us this year in 2020, but has always been pertinent to us as Muslims as we're trying to liberate ourselves from the dunya. So it could
Mm.
be taken on so many levels: spiritual, social, political, whatever it may be. So it's been a lot of amazing conversations, and we've hosted artists from all over the world. We had an artist from Pakistan featured on this series. One of our artists locally here in the Bay Area, Sarah Moore, who's also a mental health professional, she spoke on it as well. And, as a series, that's been really phenomenal. I feel like art can always be something amazing. Art is not only just the aesthetics, right? Art can always, there's always an art and, right? Um, Liberation is something that we have chosen to focus a lot more on this year, and it's something that we've been doing a lot inadvertently already, but with definitely a stronger focus. And hopefully, as these months go by, we're praying that this pandemic starts to ease up, and we can be liberated from this lockdown and start doing some art walks, socially distanced art walks, socially distanced museum visits, so we can get artists again together in community. um, that's really something that the community aspect has been a big part since Gamma began, and that's been one of our big challenges of the pandemic is how do we continue to maintain those relationships, right?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And, the opportunity for art to, from a social justice lens point, and being able to share one's expression individually and holistically represent a community as well. So, talk about art from the perspective of social justice.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give a mention of two different artists. I've worked with an artist in the UK. His name is Muhammad Ali Aerosol, and pretty soon after the murder of George Floyd happened this year, he put up a mural that said "I can't breathe" and it had essentially a gas mask on it. This was taken down. He put it up again, and it was taken down again. And it actually became really like a focal point on this discussion about social justice and what solidarity looks like. I mean, this is in Birmingham. This is in Birmingham. This is in the UK, right? So this really became an
Right.
international movement. So the reason why I mention him is because this is someone who is a person of color who has maybe experienced a lot of this similar injustices, racial injustices in the UK, declaring the solidarity, right? So I want to mention him. The other artist that comes to mind, who's from Oakland, California, I haven't gotten a chance to work with him in Gamma yet, but inshallah, hopefully soon, is brother Amir Abdul Shakur, right? He is a photographer, and this year his photography has really been picking up a lot of steam. He's gotten a lot of features in media. And the reason why is he focuses a lot on Black joy and Black excellence. So he has a lot of portraiture photography. And there was one specific photograph that comes to mind. And perhaps I can send it to you a little bit later so you can sort of include it when you post this podcast, which shows a photo of someone holding up a sign, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that specific photograph has been replicated by artists, has been used and actually shown on basketball stadiums across the country, has picked up a lot of steam. I think one version of that was even at Times Square, is displayed at Times Square.
Nice.
So images like this, it brings back to mind the Black Panther Party, Emory Douglas and his artwork. Visual art has a way of entering your heart and completely bypassing all the other sort of mental blocks that happen along the way. I think we face a lot of rhetoric, a lot of talk, a lot of conversation, Facebook comments. These are all words engage with the mind, right? But what art does is it skips all of that and just it builds and focuses on creating that emotional reaction, right? And that's something that unifies people. That's something that excites people. That can ignite people as well, right? I mean, you can see, for example, the resurgence of issues around the Charlie Hebdo caricature of the Prophet Muhammad,
So,
right? This is a piece of art that has really ignited a huge response, right? So art can offend, art can inspire, but one thing that you can't deny is that art can have a huge impact on social issues, like straight up,
right.
undeniable.
Yeah. Um, this podcast is titled the Muslim Philanthropy Podcast, and philanthropy is often connected with charitable giving, with sharing of one's talents, their time, and their testimony and treasures. So definitely in the spirit of time and talent, I see a lot of linkage in kind of this work in the community, and when people are also supporting artists financially, right? That can also be seen as philanthropy. So, in terms of relation to philanthropy and its definition being the love of mankind, how would you say art kind of connects with that as well?
I think art plays a huge role, and I think fundamentally a paradigm shift does need to happen in order for us to allow that realization to enter our daily lives. And that shift is this. I think that as a society, we see artists as producers and we see art as a product that we are then to consume. And it makes a very transactional experience, right? The paradigm shift, and this is what I challenge everyone to think of, is to see an artist as a service provider rather than a producer who's giving you a product. And when you start to think this way, I mean, this can raise a lot of questions, and we need to ask ourselves these questions. What service is this artist providing, right? Whether it's something super basic like when the pandemic hit, everyone's stuck at home. What's everyone doing? Mass media, Netflix, right? Books, TV shows, movies. These are all created by artists, right? Down to we talk about healing, right? You want to talk about the love of mankind. If you want to talk about a cathartic release through artwork, right? You
Mm-hmm.
look, there's a lot of amazing films that provide this kind of perspective, right? You want to think about one very important thing to do when someone is in pain is to be able to acknowledge their pain and to sit with them in that pain. And one way to acknowledge pain is through art,
Right.
right? One music video that comes to mind is "This Is America." This Is America reflected a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, really painful but very pertinent and relevant things. In one video, you're seeing all these different things reflected back. And for a moment, you're like, wow, someone recognized that the fact that I'm seeing this pain outside of me is a part of that healing process. So now you have, if you want to call the artist a service provider, you think about the service of healing, right? Healing through reflection. And then you got even more abstract on it, to bring the circle back completely, artists as liberators. Now, what does this look like in your life? You
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about from a philanthropy angle, what does it look like when the artists themselves take on the role of liberator? And this could be something um, as simple as someone who creates, posters for your protest, right? Posters to put up. Um, we already talked about social justice, or this could be someone using their skills for a good cause. So behind me right here, I have a print of a Turkey, a photograph taken in Turkey. It's a little bit blurry, but I got this print from a project called For Your Team. And For Your Team is a
Right.
completely non-for-profit. Have you heard of For Your Team?
I heard about it earlier this year in Ramadan. Yeah.
Precise. So they've been doing campaign after campaign after campaign, getting amazing photographers, celebrity Muslim photographers down to emerging Muslim photographers, and all of the profits that are being made are given to orphanages, right? Are focusing on providing support for orphans who were experiencing a lot of hardship, especially during the pandemic. So brother Osama Hashmi is behind this project, and he's been doing an amazing job. And the intention has always been clear. He's a photographer. Everyone on board is a photographer. No one is making money off of this. The focus is liberation, right? I think ultimately that's what it is. So if we start to enable this paradigm shift to happen within us, this is going to change how we see art and how we consume art and how we deal with the artists in our community. If you can think of um, the human race as the blood that courses through the veins of the body that is this earth, I see artists as the white blood cells who are always in tune with what's going on in society, always in tune with the pain, and they're at the site immediately to provide that healing and that focus.
That's a really cool analogy. And back to your scientific background, I see. Um, so, in terms of how people can learn more about Gamma, support Gamma, what would you like to share with people?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, follow us on Instagram, check us out on Facebook. We've recently started a YouTube channel because we've done a lot of virtual programming. So we've been posting up the videos on our YouTube channel. Most of our programming is done through Facebook. That just tends to be where a lot of people are at. And you can definitely support us and support our artists by sending us a little bit of financial love. We don't have a lot of big grants the same way a lot of other nonprofits do, and a lot of our fundraising actually is kind of non-typical. Is I think that we tend to fundraise based on the projects that we have. Right, we're very lean model, completely volunteer team. If anyone's getting paid, it's we're getting paid by project. And so when we have a specific project in mind, figure out how much we need and fundraise specifically for that project. Right, we've done a couple of crowdfunding campaigns that has helped us build a website, that's helped us build out our online presence. And what I would say is, by donating to Gamma, the biggest thing that I would want you to know is that the majority of the money that we spend as an organization is directly to artists. So in any given project, the majority of the budget is actually giving performance fees, honorarium fees, stuff like that, speaker fees to artists. Right? I am a really big proponent in getting artists paid. I know a lot of artists tend to be generous and do a lot of things pro bono for the community. But if there's one takeaway for anyone who's listening to this podcast, is pay your artists.
For sure. Definitely. So anything else you want to share in general about yourself, about Gamma, about AMCF?
I just want to give a huge thank you to you, Muhi, and to AMCF. There's been an online series on really all the ins and outs of managing and running a nonprofit, from building a nonprofit to fundraising to engaging your donors and all of that. That's really been helpful to us. We've always been a very non-traditional nonprofit, in the sense that, already mentioned our fundraising style, but also we're completely voluntary for the last 4 years. We have 3 chapters and are always just trying to do a lot. About myself, what I would say is, I think that, ultimately everything for me comes down to relationships. So, whether you're building a relationship through art or you're breaking bread with a brother or sister, I think focusing on that and building relationships and moving at the speed of trust is the one thing that's going to ensure building community and success in philanthropy. That's my 2 cents. Again, like, I'm a biotech professional. I have, before Gamma, no experience running a nonprofit, no experience fundraising, no experience marketing, just sort of hitting the ground running. So, from the perspective of an outsider, that would just be my 2 cents, is just always move at the speed of trust and focus on your relationships, and everything else will fall into place, inshallah.
Inshallah. Yeah, I love that advice of going at the speed of trust, and just kind of seeing you run the organization. Like, you could have fooled me. I thought, like, you're doing such a great job. And even if you're doing it off the cuff, I'm glad that resources like AMCF's Social Impact Accelerator are helping your organization, your leadership. And I think the nonprofit community needs more creativity, and the way in which your startup mentality of running this organization, I think, has shown the reason why you've been able to grow and establish different chapters across the country and have a really good support system. So, thanks for the kind words. Really glad to have you on as a guest. I'm going to be following all your food posts and going to all the places that you recommend to, for sure. And just really glad that you could spend some time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you for always supporting the endeavors that we do. I really, really appreciate you, Muhi.
You got it. I appreciate you as well. Take care.
You too. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.